My blood raced cold as I saw her. I was standing at the top of the hill feeling frozen as the sun hammered down on my back. She was Karen, the same Karen from the HOA that had troubled us years before. This time, though, she was not sending fictitious violation notices or using binoculars to spy. No, this time she was in the midst of my ranch packing my son's crops, his vegetables, his labor, into her SUV as though they belonged to her. Just some sort of shopping pickup. Her teenage son was standing close by opening the trunk this way. She yelled, waving her phone in the air. "You need to back up, sir. You are trespassing. I am phoning the police." Heart thumping, dust flying with every step, I yelled. "Trespassing on my own land." Sprinting down the hill. She didn't even flinch. "That's my son's corn and squash you're stealing. Get your hands off it." Saying, "Yes, hello 911, there's a man threatening me and my son. We're at the community garden space, and he's yelling and charging at us." She simply clicked a few keys on her phone. I stopped dead still, my jaw rigid and my fists clenched. She was actually phoning 911 on me for catching her food theft from my property. Then I noticed her son had just filled their van with the last tomato basket. Everything my son and I labored for vanished. Before I could speak another word, though, I heard the distant sound of sirens and realized this would turn ugly. Let me pull you back before the sirens, before the veggie baskets, and before the dream. Allow me to relate our path to here. Out here on the dusty back roads of Arizona, I am Travis, a single parent, former fireman, and proud rancher. I bought a little 12-acre plot to start over with my son Caleb once I retired. Though he is 13, intelligent, friendly, sometimes shy, his affection is for the ground above all. Given a spoon and a seed, that lad could raise tomatoes in the desert. We initiated this little garden effort together. After Caleb's mother died 4 years ago, it was something for us to connect over and anchor us. Our treatment, our relationship, and our peace came from the ranch. Our crops developed far too quickly, actually. For all the suffering we had carried, corn, squash, cherry tomatoes, cucumbers seemed as though the land was returning some sort of gift. Starting to notice, neighbors even offered to purchase our fresh food. We never sold any of it, so we were not bothered sharing. It was not about profit to us. It had to do with healing. She started to pay attention at that. Living on the brink of the ranching community, theoretically within the HOA restrictions, Karen, full name Karen Walsh, president of the Blue Mesa Homeowners Association, and self-declared guardian of the area, resided on our land free from technical limitations. I took care of that before purchasing the property. But Karen was not stopped by that. She began to show up without invitation. "You should think about joining the HOA," she would remark, smiling falsely. Translation: "Join us, so I can control your life. We could help preserve your land, keep things safe." Every time I gently turned down. Then the threats began. Noise complaints, allegations of unapproved fence. She even accused me once of cultivating illicit plants, which turned out to be wild mint. The worst was trying to get Caleb to plant something for her. Telling him he should start producing additional tomatoes for her son's school project. She cornered him at the side of the road. She meant something, but we didn't know until a week later when her kid presented a fully grown tomato display and a PowerPoint presentation that seemed rather familiar at the regional science fair. Caleb was crushed. His own design, his arrangement, his planting calendar, duplicated. "We still let it go though," Caleb remarked. "Maybe he just needed help, Dad." He had his mother's heart, that youngster, but I wasn't blind. Then there was the trespassing. First, it was footprints. Tire traces come next. One left open a fence latch. Our irrigation system had been meddled with one evening. Before now, I refused to accept it was them. Caleb got up early this morning. "Dad, the corn is finally ripe." He had been working on a new cross-pollination project with a local horticulture organization, carefully noting every single step in a notebook. Our arrangement was to boil the corn together and rejoice when it was ready. I did, however, have to run a brief errand in town. We would harvest it together, so I advised him to wait until I returned. I only saw an unusual SUV parked close to the lower field when I pulled back up the dusty road to our ranch. I crept in. There she was, Karen loading boxes, kneeling down, cutting stalks. Her son was gassing next to her. It was robbing my boy's dream, not merely crops. And the narrative began with me, yelling at her from the mountaintop, and her ringing 911 on me. "Sir, I need you to stay calm," the officer yelled, getting out of the patrol cruiser. Minutes later, holding my ground, calm, I asked. "They pilfers food off my land." Starting to cry loudly and falsely, Karen said. "He came out of nowhere. I thought he was going to hit me. I have security cameras." I hissed, "You'll see everything." Karen's face froze for a second, but the officer paid no mind. "Let's all step back. Hands where I can see them." Caleb, meantime, arrived pale-faced and wide-eyed from the barn racing. Reaching for his notepad, the officer asked Caleb, "Dad, what's happening?" "Then back off to me. Whose property is this?" he inquired. Karen said, "This land is part of the HOA Shared Farming Initiative." He never filed a claim of exemption. Before I could respond, I almost passed out. "What? Those are not even real." She gave a sneer. "It is now." She then drew out a paper official-looking letter bearing a stamp and a signature. The guard arched an eyebrow. "Sir, we might have to clear this at the station." I backed off and noticed a falsified signature. "My name is." She now had cops listening to her after creating my name on a fictitious HOA paperwork. "Where are you watching from?" Karen yelled. "You never dealt with a crazy HOA neighbor like me?" Caleb yelled. "Back away from my dad." His voice shook but loud enough to turn every head. The cop stopped, staring between me, Karen, and my son. Karen once more switched on the false concern. "Oh, sweetheart, don't talk to my son. I know this is confusing for you." I grabbed. "You people are unbelievable." She screamed, her mask sliding barely for a moment. The policeman entered once more. "Everyone calm down. We'll sort this out, but I need you," he said, pointing at me, "to come with me to the station." Startled, I asked, "For what?" "She's the one pulling off a fraud. That document is fake." "She has paperwork," he replied straightforwardly. "We have to treat it as official till proven otherwise." Caleb grabbed my arm. "Dad, last week you showed me how to review the footage. We have the camera." My heart shot forward. Indeed, I had 2 motion-detecting cameras in the crops themselves and motion-detecting cameras all along the fence line. Caleb had watched me run them on his iPad. I looked at the police officer. "My son has video proof right now. We could show you right now." Karen folded her arms and laughed when the officer glanced at her. "He probably doctored it. You people and your backyard hillbilly tricks." I tightened my jaw but said nothing. Caleb opened his iPad when I nodded to him. He tapped one video and held it up a moment later after swipes across the security app. Karen and her son were walking straight onto our territory in full color and crystal clarity. No permission, no conversation, just basket after basket being loaded with our produce. The officer nodded after a protracted silence. Karen's face grew pale, but she rapidly added, bringing out her phone once more. "This land is still under HOA jurisdiction. I have the stamped letter to prove it." I turned to the police officer. "Could we confirm the signature on that document?" "I have to go back to the department," he added. "We will get a handwriting specialist if necessary." Karen reached back for the paper. She was unraveling. "That won't be necessary. I have more documents at home." The police agent watched her warily. "Now, ma'am, I will need to ask you and your son to come with me." Screaming, "What? I'm the victim here." Karen reached for the vegetable baskets from the rear of her SUV. "This is for my son's school. He's hungry." "You think this is just theft? You think this is easy for a single mother?" Caleb squatted. I took front stage for him. I stared at the deceased cop straightforwardly. "I'm a single father too. I don't steal from children." Karen was hauled into the squad car. Her son remained there not sure what to do until the officer summoned over a second unit to escort him. I felt sorry rather than outraged about the child. From what kind of example was he growing up? Caleb pulled my sleeve as the cops pulled off. Dad, do you suppose she'll be back? I groaned and bent down next to him. I don't know, buddy, but we're going to make sure she can't, said that night as we sat on the porch together and gazed at the sky. Caleb seemed more subdued than usual. At last he asked, I don't get it. Why would someone lie like that? Why would she forge your name? I rounded his shoulder with an arm. Some people view kindness as weakness, I remarked. And when they can't control you, they try to take what you love. But you know what? They can't grow what they didn't plant. They can't take our truth. He only gave a tiny smile. I laughed then. Yeah, and they don't know how to make grandma's cornbread either. Exactly. It was a nice moment, a gentle one. But the next morning we woke up to something quite different. Our gate had a letter caught to it. HOA letterhead. Same produced signature. My jaw dropped except this time when it had a brilliant red mark over it saying, Final notice, property seizure approved. Confused, Caleb dashed over. What's that? I pulled the letter down and quickly perused it. This one stood out among others. It was detailed, not only phony. It indicated our ranch was under temporary supervision, awaiting more investigation, as it had been integrated into the HOA for the benefit of the community. Karen had escalated matters, and this time she was not being little. Just in time, I spun back to saw a moving truck crawling down our gravel road. 3 men with yellow vests left. One carried a sheet of paper. Hello there, he said. We're here to start the property investigation. Shouldn't take more than a few hours. I focused narrow eyes. Who sent you? Blue Mesa HOA office, he said dismissively, then touched his clipboard. Says here we're allowed to visit the land and evaluate it for use. My hands came together in fists. Karen didn't finish. She was trying to grab everything and had asked for backup. We were dealing with more than just a small-time picker now. There was war here. Before the man with the clipboard could go forward, I moved in front of him. You're not walking 1 foot on this ranch, I stated, voice low and calm. This land is not part of your HOA. That document is a forgery. The man blinked, surprised. Sir, I'm just here performing my job. I was told this was cleared with the HOA president. If there's a mistake, you can take it up with them. I shook my head. One of the other men, obviously younger and less comfortable, pushed the clipboard guy. No. You dons get it. This is my land, not under your HOA. And Karen, the woman who called you, has already been reported to the sheriff for trespassing and forgery. Hey, maybe before we get involved in something legal we should call the office first. Still, the guy with the clipboard was tenacious. I have authorization. If you block us, I have to report you for obstruction. Caleb stood barefoot and furious next to me now. You're the ones breaking through here. I dropped down to gently prod my lad back. Should everything fall apart, I wanted him out of the way. Pulling out my phone. Here's what's going to happen, I stated. You're going to turn around, call your office, and tell them the ranch owner is calling the sheriff again. And if you step 1 inch past this gate, I will have every single one of you cited for criminal trespass. I held back from speaking out. Though I meant every word, I did not threaten. The guys glanced at one another. The younger one said once again, following a tense silence. Let's go, man. We're not cops. We're not getting in the middle of this. At last, the man with the copyback shucked back. Fine, your call. But you'll be hearing from the HOA again. They're pretty aggressive about enforcement. I tightly grinned. So am I. Reversing out the driveway, they loaded back into their pickup. Caleb breathed. I thought they were going to try and break in. I rested a hand on his shoulder. That's why I'm glad you stayed calm. But this is just the beginning. Later that day, I drove to the office of the county recorder. On file I had copies of every property deed, zoning exception, and boundary agreement. Over 2 hours it took, but I left with a whole folder proving our land never belonged to the HOA. I even located the original survey map, signed back upon the founding of the ranch. Karen could not dispute cold, hard documentation. That is, so I assumed. Caleb was sitting on the porch pale-faced when I arrived home. "Dad," he remarked. He handed me his iPad and said, "You better see this." On the screen was a post from the Blue Mesa HOA Facebook page. Karen Walsh, our brave HOA president, has discovered illegal crop operations on shared community land. Thankfully, the HOA is stepping in to protect our kids from unregulated food sources. Let's all thank her for protecting our values and safety. Attached to it was a picture of our cornfield, fence, crops. The narrative had virtually eliminated my name. Karen was changing the story such that folks now thought I was the villain. Caleb's eyes were watery. There were already scores of comments. "Good for you, Karen. Finally, someone standing up to these off-grid weirdos. Kids deserve safe food, not whatever that guy's growing. They are disparaging you in bad terms." I drew him in for an embrace. "I don't care what they say, son. The truth is what counts, and we will prove it." One toward the bottom, though, was the worst remark. It said, "Should we report him to the State Agriculture Board?" And I understood Karen was not merely trying to frighten us. She was trying to ruin us. The next morning we woke up to more trouble. My mailbox flattened and broke in half. Overnight, someone had ran it over. And lying next to it was a letter inside a clear plastic sleeve. Notice on State Agriculture Inspection. Signed and stamped, it looked legitimate. "We are looking at unlicensed produce, operations and food safety issues on your property. Kindly expect a site investigation 72 hours from now." I felt my gut drop. "Dad," Caleb said in a whisper, "they want to close us down." I raised my head to face the heavens. It was dry, cloudless, and shockingly quiet. But within I rumbled like thunder. "I have to speak with a lawyer," I murmured. And I intended it this time. That same afternoon, I gave my friend Joe a call from my former firefighting years. Now he was a lawyer handling municipal government excess and land conflicts. He did not doubt me or laugh when I went over everything. "I've seen HOA Karens like this before. Let me come take a look," he offered. That evening he showed up, went over all the paperwork, and viewed the camera footage. Then he fixed me squarely in the eyes and said, "She's playing dirty, but she's sloppy. That's good for us. What do we do?" I said. "Tomorrow morning," Joe added. "We file an emergency restraint order, report her for criminal forgery, and file a cease and desist against the HOA." I gave a subdued nod. "Will that stop them?" "It will scare them," he remarked. "And should it not, we sue." Karen still had to finish though. That evening, I saw something odd close to the ranch's boundary, as the sun was lowering behind the hills. Flashing light. 2 comes next. 3rd comes next. Running along the gravel road, I carried a flashlight. My heart almost exploded. Flames, when I came to the edge of the cornfield. Little, under control burns directly at the crop line's base. Presumably expecting it would catch, someone had poured gasoline or oil and lit them. Fortunately, the crops had not spread yet as they were still moist from soaking. This was not a warning. I stamped them out with boots and a fire blanket from the barn. It was an attack. Caleb arrived sprinting with a hose and assisted with area dousing. With wide-open terror, he stared at me. "Dad, they want to burn all of it down." I looked out at the blackness beyond the field. She was watching somewhere out there. Karen had gone beyond what was reasonable. She was not merely engaged in HOA gaming now. She arrived for all we owned. And right now it was personal. I slept hardly the next morning. Every sound outside startled me awake. A twig snapping, an owl hooting, even the breeze brushing against the glass caused me to sit up. Nothing could endanger Caleb or the ranch for me. I had already installed 2 more cameras at the gates and plugged in motion-activated floodlights throughout the field by 6:30 a.m. Still asleep, Caleb was huddled in the living room with his blanket, clutching his iPad like it was a security shield. I did not assign responsibility to him. By 8 a.m., Joe arrived carrying paperwork. He added, passing me a document, "Restraining order's been filed. We are also hitting them with document fraud, attempted arson, and criminal trespass." I gazed at the pages, inhaled deeply. I said, "She'll still try something." "You know she will," he said. "That is why I carried backup." A beat-up white pickup vehicle rumbled behind him on the drive. Out walked Becky, another old friend from my fire department days. She was running a private security company right now. She was intelligent than most attorneys I have known and as tough as nails. Tossing me a walkie, Becky replied. "Figured I'd patrol your perimeter for a few days. Just in case Karen chooses to get dumb once more." On every fence post, gate, and treeline on the property, we posted copies of the restraining order and cease and desist that afternoon. We had finished being quiet. Done acting kindly. Caleb helped me hammer them in. "Do you think she'll really stop?" he questioned, as I stared back at him. "I don't think she'll stop. I think she'll get terrified." And I was correct as well. About 4 p.m., we heard a loudspeaker screaming over the forest. "This is a warning to the illegal occupants of Blue Mesa Community Property," the voice echoed. "You directly go against HOA rules. Empty the ground 48 hours from now." As we hurried down the driveway, what we saw sent my blood boiling. Wearing a jacket, Karen was standing behind a rented flatbed truck with a megaphone. Possibly 15 to 20 people gathered around her. Behind her was a printed banner bearing, "Blue Mesa Community Take Back Day." Most were merely bored neighbors seeking controversy. Some were legitimate HOA members. Caleb cried. "She's organizing an event." She brought donuts, fold-out chairs, coolers loaded with Coke, and one large sign declaring, "Reclaim our land." My hands went tighter. Stunned, Joe walked next to me. "This is ridiculous. Public harassment is what this is." Karen looked at me and grinned through the megaphone. She yelled, pointing theatrically, "There he is. The man illegally occupying HOA land and corrupting our youth with poisonous food." Her fans clapped. A couple of individuals jeered me. Caleb shaked and huddled behind me. "Do something," he murmured. In a whisper. I advanced. "You're trespassing." I shot back. "I have a lawyer standing right here and a restraining order." Karen nodded with a smile. "That piece of paper has no meaning at all. Should our community vote to recover this territory?" She then started to snap her fingers, and someone in the audience unrolled yet another fictitious document bearing false stamps. Again, my name was printed on it under false pretenses, that I had signed over the land for shared communal usage. Joe stood forward. "This is fraudulent behavior. We are contacting the sheriff here." Over him, Karen yelled. "We live with the police working for us. They are members of the HOA." Naturally a falsehood, yet her audience applauded as if it were gospel. Joe took out his cell phone. Becky clasped arms and headed toward the group sporting sunglasses. Becky yelled out, "You have exactly 5 minutes to leave this property." Karen burst out laughing. "Or what?" asked. Becky drew out her phone and pressed a button. 2 unidentified vehicles drew up the driveway 2 minutes later. Deputies from a sheriff's office. Karen's face twitched. One deputy left, devoid of expression. "Ma'am, you are breaking a court-issued restraining order. You have to leave the grounds." She sputtered. "But this is our land," she said. The deputy got his tablet out. "You are indeed under investigation for forgery. We have your docs. Your signature does not match his records. I will so ask once more. Get off the land." The face of Karen turned beet crimson. Her fans started to whisper. People turned away from the truck one by one. A few uncomfortably walked off totally. Karen once more grabbed her megaphone. "You all came upon this dude. This criminal is here. He is lying here. He is seeking control over the territory and poisoning our children." The cop removed the megaphone from her softly. "Ma'am, I will have to restrain you if you keep yelling." Her son in the background seemed ashamed. Karen cried out, "This isn't over." She then leaped from the truck, raced into her car, and drove off the driveway, leaving behind her donuts, cooler, and pride. The deputies assured us they would fast-track her case, gathered evidence, and recorded statements. The crowd vanished, the sirens fading as Caleb and I stood silently, whispering, "She's going to come back, isn't she?" he asked. I straightforward rather than lie, "Yes." We had still another guest the following day. This time it was a black blazer-wearing woman with a state agricultural board badge, not Karen. "We have gotten several complaints about illegal farming, poor pesticide application, and dangerous crops," she said. I groaned. "Karen, again." The inspector cast a compassionate glance. "She's filed 5 complaints in the last 2 days." She looked over our yard, the tools, the water supply, even our compost heap. An hour later she returned, hardly smiling. "Your land is in great shape," she remarked. "Actually, among the little farms I have seen, this is among the best kept ones." Relief came over me. I said, "Will that shut her down?" The inspector laughed. "Probably not, but the report will be publicly filed, and she cannot file the same complaint once it's resolved." But that evening we found Karen had already made her next move. Caleb came racing when I was shutting the barn. He shed tears. "Dad." She produced a video. "On Facebook is where it is." I got the iPad and clicked on the link. She was there, tears and mascara running in her living room. He yelled at me. He pursued me across the ground. One of my sons suffers trauma. All I wanted was fresh food. I had no idea it would turn into a legal fight. She then carried up a little Ziploc bag. Within were a handful of our cherry tomatoes. She answered, "I found these on my son's plate. He has been unwell consistently since. What was in them is unknown to me." Simply said, "I want justice." Soft music and a call to donations marked the last scene of the video. She had created a $10,000 GoFundMe goal. Title: Legal support for a mother opposing land degradation. The worst of all is also from folks who really believed her. She had already collected nearly $3,200. Heart-hammering, I looked to Caleb. Caleb looked shocked, not just lying. "She's gathering an army." I couldn't even enjoy my cup of coffee the next morning without hearing that woman's name. Overnight, Karen's video got 2 million shares. Becky replied, scowling as she browsed her phone. She's been highlighted on a few neighborhood blog pages. Among them there was one calling her the Farm Mom of the Month. I choked almost on my coffee. Mrs. Farmer Mom? She has never in her life planted anything. Becky shrugging. Doesn't matter. People are loving her sobtail. She has one. Caleb emerged from the house looking pale, still in his jammies. "Dad." One student in our class group shared the video. "You are known as Veggie Thief." My pulse dropped. "We'll not let this beat us, son." "But what if everyone believes her?" He said gently. "What if the lie is accepted everywhere?" I stared at him, then turned back toward Becky. "Then we present them the truth." Joe assisted us in creating a proper media statement including all of our evidence, the actual records, the camera footage, the State Agricultural Board inspection, and, most crucially, the original land deed proving we were not part of the HOA. We forwarded it to the same blogs that had posted Karen's moving account. A few paid attention, while others turned aside it. One little outlet specifically asked to interview me. About my son, about our healing through farming, about the falsified signatures, the false paperwork, and the fire near our crops, about everything. At first, the reporter appeared dubious until I sent her the video showing Karen actually stuffing baskets of vegetables into her car. She was quiet at the end of the call. At last she answered, "I'll run the story. But fair warning, Karen has friends in the proper places. Exercise caution." That hardly bothered me. Politics was not something I gave any thought. All I wanted was to live in harmony with my son. Things changed at the conclusion of the week. The local news channel produced a split program asking HOA hero or fraud. Blue Mesa controversy burst on internet. They presented both perspectives, but the remarks changed when the video showed Karen and her son trespassing carrying boxes of our produce. "Wait, is this the same Karen from that Facebook video?" One inquired. "Why is she carrying tomatoes in the video if she claims not to have taken anything? She said she never visited the place, yet there is video." Her GoFundMe page lost contributors first. Demand for reimbursements started among people. Panicked, Karen followed her usual action when her back is against the wall. She hit hard and without warning. Late one night, Caleb was asleep, and I was finishing paperwork over the phone when we heard something crash outside. A tremendous boom like with splintering. Travis, motion sensors set off by the east fence, promptly radioed Becky, who was asleep in the guest trailer on the far end of the ranch. Something major just dropped. Not to use, only to scare off whatever it was, I grabbed my shotgun and flashlight and hurried outside. When we came upon Becky halfway down the path, we stopped in our tracks. Not only shattered, but the whole east fence had been taken down. Broken chains, wooden beams snapped, and a tractor sat right in the middle of the trash. Not yours. Karen had access to farm tools but did not own any. Becky went over it. This comes from CityWorks Landscaping. They pay for equipment. We shot pictures, noted the serial number, and promptly phoned the authorities. Within 20 minutes, deputies showed up and drove the tractor off as proof. Their shock matched that of ours. One of them observed, "This is property destruction. If this relates back to her, she might be looking at jail." 1 hour later, Joe showed up. "This was her power move," he observed somberly. "She understood she was losing control of the web story. She wanted to flatten your boundaries, ruin your crops, and most likely claim you gave up the ground. She is not going to stop." "No, she's not," I said in a whisper. Joe nodded. "We must thus resume public appearances. This time, harder." The following day we carried out exactly that. Becky assisted in our brief video filming. Caleb stood next to me clutching his gardening notebook. I mentioned the land, the falsehoods, the robbery, and the risk. Then I turned to face the camera and declared, "This isn't only about crops. It's about showing my son that even if a bully with authority seeks to take truth away, it is worth fighting for." The footage was unvarnished and sincere. Within a day it became viral. By evening my inbox was overflowing: reporters, attorneys, parents, veterans, farmers, citizens. All around the nation. People who had their own HOA dreams, those who had been misled about, those tired of being pushed into quiet. Even Caleb's school emailed apologizing for the bullying and inviting him to talk about gardening at the Earth Week fair. But Karen moved at last, just as we believed the worst had passed. Becky watched while I was out repairing the damaged fence and hammering in the posts. Joe's pickup screamed into the driveway. He left with a pallid face, waving a manila envelope. "You won't believe this," he continued. "What now?" Asked, half dreading the response, I questioned. "She turned in a civil lawsuit." My belly plummeted. "Claiming what?" "She is suing you for psychological distress to her kid, harassment, and slander. She claims the internet reaction destroyed her life and blames you for the threats she has received." Caleb came running behind us, eyes wild. "What does that mean?" he queer-eyed. Joe turned to face me. "It means we are heading to court." Caleb's mouth open. "She's suing us." I inhaled deeply, looked out at the rebuilt fence and nodded. "Yeah," I remarked. "And I say we let her." The courtroom was bursting with people. Every seat was occupied. Blue Mesa residents, reporters with notepads, even a few inquisitive teenagers who had been tracking the story online. There was a lot of bustle around us. Everyone had gathered to see the confrontation between HOA Karen and the rancher featuring the viral video. Karen wore a black dress and a neck brace while seated at the plaintiff's table with her counsel. Yes, a neck brace, as though someone had actually injured her. Every time the judge turned her direction, she started dabbing her eyes with a tissue. Caleb put his hand on mine. "Dad, we're going to be fine, right?" I nodded firmly back to him. "We're defending land, son, not only here. We are standing for the truth." "Lean over," Joe said softly. "Remember, just answer clearly, stick to the facts, and let the evidence speak louder than she ever could." Karen's attorney went first when the judge at last entered, and the matter was called. Claiming my inflammatory and false web video caused mental suffering, social isolation, and emotional harm to her teenage son, He portrayed a vulnerable single mother being emotionally abused by a local tyrant. Then came the bombshell. They sought damages of $150,000. I almost laughed right out loud. The judge turned to look at Joe. Defense Joe stood coolly clutching a large binder. Your Honor, we'll prove that Ms. Walsh has consistently harassed, trespassed, and defamed my client, all while attempting to steal property and manipulate public opinion by a false narrative. Her claim is not only meritless. The best part then arrived. The records. Joe pulled up our security camera. There it was. Karen and her son packing without authorization crops into their SUV. Next, the video of the fire close to the crop line. Then the motion-triggered tractor breaking the fence late at night. The State Agriculture Board report clearing our farm comes next. The courtroom went silent. Karen started to move tensely. Joe then dropped the last blow. A forensic handwriting report showing Karen had created my signature on several HOA records, including the fictitious property seizure letter. Not even the judge leaned forward. Karen shook her head furiously even though her attorney stood forward and murmured something desperately into her ear. She yelled, "I didn't forge anything," and got to her feet. He's lying. He organized me. The judge struck her gavel hard. Ms. Walsh, sit down or be removed from the courtroom. Karen slumped back into her chair, flushed and started to breathe hard. The witness comments followed. Becky testified on the fire night and about the broken fence. Caleb stood there, voice steady, and related how Karen startled him with her gathering of people yelling through a megaphone on our driveway, and how Karen tried to convince him to grow food for her kids' project. When it came time for me, I turned directly toward the jurors. I'm a dad trying to raise a boy the correct way. I'm not rich or powerful. Though Karen came for our land, our work, and our reputation, all we ever wanted was peace. She now wants to sue us for presenting the world the truth. Still in the courtroom was the silence. The judge then said, "This court finds no merit in the plaintiff's claims and dismisses the matter with prejudice. Moreover, this court is recommending Ms. Walsh for criminal inquiry, considering the volume of falsified papers and evidence of harassment." The audience let out a gasp. Karen cried once more. "This isn't over. This is a configuration." Still yelling, she was led out of the courthouse. HOA Karen was formally under criminal investigation, and the sheriff was waiting outside. Reporters crowded us outside the courtroom. "Travis, now what are you going to do? Are you charging pressing fees? Will you seek damages back off from her?" I gripped Caleb tightly. "I just want to get home," I said. Caleb, however, leaned in the mic and whispered something that made everyone grin. "I simply wish to resume tomato planting." Life gradually came back under control. From the HOA Facebook page, Karen's face vanished. Henry, an elderly guy who came over to personally shake my hand, was named new acting president. "I cannot undo what she did," he said to me. "But I wanted to start with an apology and an invitation." I arched an eyebrows. Invitation to what? To stay out of HOA business permanently. He laughingly, "You have earned your peace. Just fair." Days went by. Our crops sprang back to life. For his garden endeavor, Caleb received a local honor at the Earthweek Fair. Better still, a Flagstaff local organic food shop contacted to supply some of our vegetables. They claimed to have loved our narrative and seen the video. Actually, truth travels a great distance. But one evening Caleb turned to me as we sat on the veranda beneath the stars. "Dad?" "Yeah, buddy. Do you think Karen ever honestly felt she was right?" I paused for a long time. Sometimes individuals tell themselves a falsehood so many times they forget it's a lie. And everyone around them has already suffered by the time they come to see they are mistaken. He nodded deliberately. "Will she come back?" I reached around him with one arm. "Maybe. But should she do, we will be ready. This ground, this life, it is ours. And no HOA anywhere can remove that from us." The first actual indication of peace showed up on a clear Saturday morning. Not in the form of a formal letter or a news headline, but rather something very simpler, a hand-painted sign at the edge of our ranch fence. Caleb and I had created it over the weekend. Just a little wooden board with strong letters saying, Caleb's Garden, grown with heart, not hate. He had this concept. Following everything. The trespassing, the lies, the fire, the lawsuit. He wanted no retribution. He had grown bored with fighting. His only desire was for growth. More importantly than anything, I appreciated a few days following the court triumph. We had a visit from Sheriff Danner, the same deputy who had first responded when Karen phoned 911 on me for pilfering her own crops. This time his face seemed at ease. He gave me a strong shake of hand. "We've finished the research," he remarked, opening a little notepad. "There are all the fake documentation, false HOA notifications, complaint fraud. We are formally billing for charges." I nodded deliberately slowly. "Is she poised to go to jail?" "That's up to the prosecutor," he answered. "But given her record, she will be subject to major penalties. Her HOA presidency has been taken back already. Multiple refund requests and flagging for dishonesty caused her GoFundMe page to be closed." Then he stopped. "And the incident with the tractor?" The landscaping firm verified she signed a leasing agreement under the name of her cousin. "That is property damage of a felony level." I let out a sigh of release. Finally, it's over. He then wrinkled his brow. "Let's just say it's almost finished." Fair enough. At home, the ground was alive. Even taller now was the corn. The tomatoes tasted better than they ever did. Tall and proud, the sunflowers moved in the breeze like my son. We even managed to reconstruct the fence line stronger than it had been. Joe assisted us in creating legal protections for the property such that none, not HOA nor otherwise, could claim it going forward. Becky? Also, she volunteered to be our security consultant on a part-time basis just in case. Caleb has begun videotaping brief movies of his gardening technique. People loved it, to our amazement. One went popular first, then another. Abruptly, a little gardening YouTube channel emerged, Growing with Caleb. In a week, it attracted hundreds of members. Those from all around posted remarks like, "I followed this story when Karen sought to grab your land. Your son is really remarkable. My HO attempted the same stunt. I appreciate you getting in front of things. Watching Caleb's corn develop tips is great fun for my daughter." Every time someone referred to him as an inspiration, he flushed, but I could see the subdued pride on his face. I had never taken greater pride in him. One afternoon Caleb was making a video about composting, when we noticed a familiar automobile parked down the road. That bumper had the form of the back of my hand. Kramer. She arrived at the home nowhere. She simply remained there, partially out of her car, observing us from a distance. Not angry, not triumphant, simply hollow. Her hair was pulled back, there was no megaphone, no gathering, no neck brace. She spent a lot of time staring at Caleb before turning and leaving without a word. I kept Caleb in dark about who it was. He said nothing. We both knew, hence we had no need to give her one more moment of calm. Caleb inquired whether he might spend that evening sleeping on the porch. There was chilly air and brilliant stars. He peered over as we sat in our rocking chairs and said a memory-worthy comment. "Dad, I doubt Karen detested us." I tilted my head. "Oh, really?" He gave his nod. "She hated that we were happy without needing anyone's approval," said one. I let his comments to sink in. Intelligent youngster. In line with his mother. Not only for neighbors, but a few weeks later we had our first community harvest day. We invited a nearby shelter, a few small businesses, and even some town residents who had tracked our narrative. We let families choose their own sunflowers, showed youngsters how to plant seeds, and distributed baskets of veggies. There is no HOA, no policies, no gatekeepers, just goodwill. Simply ground. Exactly, son. The way that life ought to be. Caleb stood next to me, hands on his hips, grinning as he gazed out over the field as the sun started to drop that evening. "You think we'll ever be left alone?" he questioned. I grinned. "I don't think people like us should be left on their own, child. We are supposed to be growers. And when you grow something, people will constantly try to get the fruit without sowing the seed. But right now we're stronger." I nodded and said, "We are." And should anyone ever try again? He laughed and lifted a shovel like a sword. We explore here. To everyone out there listening, stand your ground whether you are dealing with a Karen, an unfair HOA, someone attempting to claim what you created with your own hands. Tell me your narrative. Save the things that really count. Truth always outgrows the lies. Hence, no false authority can undo what has been established with love. Comment by dropping a letter. From what location are you viewing? Have you ever come with a HOA this extreme? We would be happy to hear your tale below.